Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Two presidential debates are now on the schedule, with the first set for June. President Biden and former President Trump accept invitations from two mainstream media outlets for a battle of wits. What does each one need to do to make maximum impact? Our contributors answer.
Bankrolling candidates, big data analytics, and deep fakes. Chinese regime tactics to influence the 2024 elections brought to light at a Senate hearing on foreign threats.
Republicans prioritizing support for law enforcement this National Police Week. How the House voted on 3 new crime bills.
They chant slogans against Israel and in support of Gaza, but is the Chinese Communist Party lurking in the shadows? A new report on the CCP's role in anti-Israel protests.
Google's latest move, infusing AI into its search results. Say goodbye to clicking. Google will do the Googling for you.
As mentioned, it's National Police Week. How can police be better prepared to protect and serve? And are there any jurisdictions that serve as a model for enforcing the law? A former prosecutor tells us.
The first Mexican taco stand to get a Michelin star. Discover the tiny business with big aspirations.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome. Today is Thursday, May 16th.
CNN's picked their moderators for that first presidential debate in Atlanta. It's Jake Tapper and Dana Bash.
Nice. It's also actually the date is pretty early, considering that at that point, none of the candidates will actually have formally accepted their nominations.
That's right.
Well, after months of stalemate, President Biden and former President Trump coming to a sudden agreement over 2 debates.
But the dates and formats could surprise many Americans. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us the details.
After some quick back and forth, Biden and Trump have now both agreed to 2 debates. The first one by CNN happening in just 6 weeks on June 27th. Another one by ABC on September 10th. Biden on Wednesday afternoon said he's looking forward to these debates while denying that he's doing one so early in June because he's worried about his polling. But Trump's now asking for 4 debates in total, including one by Fox on October 2nd, saying Americans need to hear more about inflation, the border, and chaos in the world. Biden's campaign, meanwhile, slamming the door for more debates, accusing Trump of playing games and insisting that Biden only wants 2 one-on-one debates. Here's Biden in a video on Wednesday morning. Watch.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice.
And the formats of these debates are still being debated and could surprise many. And Trump says he wants large venues to make it more exciting, while Biden's campaign wants no live audience, saying noisy spectacles aren't helpful. The June CNN debate, for example, won't have an audience and will also be the earliest televised presidential debate on record. It also marks the first time that candidates break away from the bipartisan group that has run these debates for decades. It's also the first time the debates are set before either candidate becomes the official party nominee. All the surprises come as Biden and Trump already exchanging fire, though not yet on stage.
It was just announced last month, inflation surged once again and surged very badly. Joe Biden's inflation tax continues to take away 30 to 50% of every dollar you have.
The factors that caused inflation was in place when he walked into the administration, when he took office. As you know, the pandemic caused inflation around the world.
Meanwhile, third-party candidate RFK Jr. is now accusing Biden and Trump of trying to exclude him by bypassing the traditional Commission on Presidential Debates. But Kennedy is not meeting the requirement in either case, as his polling only at 10%, which is below the 15% requirement set by both the Commission and major TV networks. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Here to talk about the scheduled presidential debates is Mike Leon. He's our contributor and the Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, as well as the host of the Can We Please Talk News Commentary podcast. Hi, Mike. Dates are set. Big stuff here. Please lay out for us how President Biden and former President Trump can make maximum impact at these debates.
Kevin, good to see you first and foremost, as always, man. Listen, the NFL schedule came out yesterday, and in politics news, we had the similar effect as the debate schedules kind of came out. You know, we were all wondering if this was actually going to happen. Remember, in 2020, one of the debates actually got canceled. So it's good to see that both of these men agreed to this finally, and the issues can kind of get laid out here. There's 7 big issues that pollers have been reporting recently of what's at stake in 2024. Abortion, immigration, healthcare, the economy, inflation. You heard it in the package before of what former President Trump said about inflation and the rise of costs year over year. So both of these men can actually talk about this in a one-on-one setting. I think the maximum impact here, the reason why the Biden administration and campaign specifically wants a one-on-one setting in a studio is because they don't want the crowd noise, right? They don't want outside influence after an answer, 2 minutes of clapping, standing ovations. If you recall in the GOP primary debates, we lost a lot of the answers because of the crowd noises when DeSantis would go back and forth with Nikki Haley. And I think this one-on-one studio setting really gives both of them an answer, an ability to answer each of them in terms of what's been going on. Trump can run on his record on the economy, and Biden obviously can run on some of the things that he's passed legislatively for his administration.
Right, and Mike, you talk about this one-on-one setting. What about RFK Jr.? It seems he's not involved in any of these debates. Why not, and should he be?
Yeah, he definitely should be. I mean, look, he's polling around 9 to 10% at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Funny enough, Kevin, we have a debate coming up July 11th, a couple weeks after at Freedom Fest, which former President Trump and current President Biden have been invited to. And we expect the majority of the third-party candidates to appear at this debate: RFK, Cornel West, Jill Stein. And these are folks that are polling, like I said, anywhere between 2, 3 to 9%, which shows that, and we've talked about this before, Kevin, 60% of Americans did not want this initial rematch. Well, you need to know what your other options are. And I think RFK right now, he's trying to make that known, right? He should be a part of this debate series. But even if he's not, we're still going to have him as part of our debates. And both candidates have been invited to the July 11th date.
And like we said, CNN picked their moderators here back in 2020. Trump took issue with Chris Wallace, Fox News anchor at the time, who basically, Trump was just saying it was 2-on-1, but it was still fun here. All right, so the American public has seen both of these candidates' actions in the White House. How much is riding on this debate as opposed to their track record?
Well, that's a great question, Kevin, because, if you think about it right now, the recent New York Times Siena College poll came out and it shows Trump leading in a bunch of key battleground states, right? Obviously, Nevada and Arizona. We know the key issues that are over there, specifically in Arizona with respect to immigration and what Carrie Lake, who's running for Senate, has championed. But then also you look at Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Everybody famously goes back to 2016 and the blue wave that did not happen for Hillary Clinton in those states, right? In 2020, those states flipped for President Biden. So this is critical for both of them, right? It's June, it's the summertime. People are starting to think about the election cycle. The conventions are in July and August, respectively. We're starting to get into the swing of things. So I think this is a critical first debate. It's a first step here. Like I said, one-on-one setting, sound bites that both campaigns can use going forward as they continue to go to different states and campaign, because they can easily both debate each other on the issues, but also talk about their record, talk about their actions. President Biden can hit Trump on some of the, obviously, court cases. And then obviously Trump can hit Biden on stuff that's been happening with immigration. And that's the number one issue that we've been seeing voters talk about. So it's going to be fun to watch for sure.
Well, thanks so much. Mike Leon, our contributor and the Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation.
Thanks, Kevin.
And a quick update on the Gaza Strip Pier project.
The U.S. military finished installing the floating pier this morning and expects to have aid flowing very soon.
The sea route is designed to bolster the amount of aid getting into the Gaza Strip, but it's not considered a substitute for cheaper land-based deliveries. Aid agencies say those are much more sustainable.
The boatloads of aid will be deposited at a port facility built by the Israelis just southwest of Gaza City and then distributed by aid groups.
A barge slammed into a bridge in Galveston, Texas yesterday, causing some structural damage and spilling oil into a Gulf Coast bay.
No injuries were reported. Officials said the accident happened after a tugboat operator lost control. The traffic over the bridge has been reduced. And former President Trump is asking New York's High Court to intervene in his fight over the gag order in his New York trial. Trump lawyers filed a notice of appeal yesterday. The document is sealed, but a Trump campaign spokesperson said it's a request to the Court of Appeals. The spokesperson called the gag order unconstitutional and un-American. He called it a, quote, third world authoritarian tactic. On Tuesday, a 5-judge panel of the mid-level appeals court said Judge Michelin made the right call. They said Trump's statements posed a significant threat to the integrity of witnesses' testimony. Last week, Michelin fined Trump $10,000 for violating the gag order and said he could face jail time if he did it again.
Republican representatives are questioning Michael Cohen's credibility and the ongoing Trump case.
They examined one of his former lawyers during a government weaponization hearing yesterday. NTD's Arlene Richards has the story.
Former lawyer and self-described fixer for former President Trump, Michael Cohen, has been taking the stand in the so-called hush money trial in New York this week. Meanwhile, in D.C. on Wednesday, representatives from the House Judiciary Committee focused on Cohen's credibility as a witness. They cross-examined a former attorney for Cohen during a hearing on the weaponization of the federal government.
This is the same Michael Cohen who pled guilty to 7 counts in an indictment that had absolutely nothing to do with President Trump and actually predated the first time he met President Trump, correct?
Absolutely true.
And in fact, this is the same Michael Cohen who perjured himself to Congress. Isn't that true?
Yes.
In 2018, Cohen pled guilty to 8 counts, including criminal tax evasion and campaign finance violations. An official Justice Department statement from that time states that the judge in the case said, Michael Cohen is a lawyer who, rather than setting an example of respect for the law, instead chose to break the law repeatedly over many years and in a variety of ways. Later, in 2018, Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress about work he did on an aborted project to build a Trump Tower in Russia.
I mean, it's one thing to lie to investigators. And I guess it's another thing to lie to Congress, but to lie to investigators and then Congress and then courts.
Don't forget the judges.
Yeah, the
judges. He lied to the judge, too, when he pled guilty.
Committee Chairman Jim Jordan pointed out that even Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg refused to work with Cohen due to his past. Bragg had allegedly said this.
Quote, he could not see a world in which he would indict Trump and call Mr. Cohen as a prosecution witness, but then he changed his mind. And he didn't change his mind until after President Trump was an announced candidate for president.
A Democratic representative, meanwhile, seemingly came to Cohen's defense when he pointed out that the attorney isn't the only one accused of lying.
Did the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, was he found guilty of lying and massive fraud by the state of New York?
Yes.
So he lied?
He did.
Honestly, and he was found guilty of it?
Yes.
Democrats at Wednesday's hearing said that Republicans are actually weaponizing the government by holding a hearing to defend a presidential candidate. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Michael Cohen goes back on the stand today to face cross-examination. It's expected to finish by the end of the day.
And former President Trump is also appealing a verdict in E. Jean Carroll's defamation case against him. He's seeking to overturn an $83 million judgment. Carroll sued Trump for defamation over statements he made denying her allegations of sexual assault. An attorney for Trump wrote yesterday, Trump is appealing all orders and rulings that led to the final judgment last month. Trump said the verdict was, quote, absolutely ridiculous and politically motivated. Carroll's lawyer did not immediately comment on Trump's appeal.
A federal judge will not shorten the prison sentence for former Trump White House advisor Peter Navarro. Navarro is in prison for contempt of Congress after defying a subpoena from the House January 6 committee. Navarro asked a D.C. district judge last week to allow him to cut 30 days off his 4-month prison sentence. He asked for 30 days of supervised release instead. Navarro cited the First Step Act. The judge rejected that request yesterday. Navarro reported to Florida federal prison in March after the Supreme Court rejected his appeals.
The Supreme Court has just issued a decision on Louisiana's redistricting. It ordered the state yesterday to hold the 2024 elections using a congressional map with an additional mostly black district. 2 of the state's 6 congressional districts now have majority black populations. This potentially boosts Democrats' chances of gaining 1 more House seat from Louisiana. A lower court previously ruled the map an illegal racial gerrymander. The Supreme Court's order does not address the lower court's ruling. Instead, it only prevents another new map from being drawn for this year's election. And coming up, bankrolling candidates, big data analytics, and deepfakes. Chinese regime global tactics brought to light at a Senate hearing on foreign threats.
The Director of National Intelligence says Beijing has perfected its tools and is growing increasingly confident in its ability to influence U.S. elections. We have takeaways from the hearing. And more anti-Israel demonstrations at a California university. But is the Chinese Communist Party lurking in the shadows? A new report on the CCP's role in the unrest coming up.
Water, nature's ultimate cleaner. We drink it, we bathe in it. Think water, think steam, think clean. Now harness the power of water with the H2O X5 5-in-1 steam cleaning system.
I'm so impressed with the X5.
It's an all-in-one product. I can use it throughout my entire house.
It's cleaning, it's sanitizing. There's no chemicals in it. It's just steam.
This is unbelievable. There is no more odor. You could spend over $500 to purchase the products that the X5 5-in-1 Miracle replaces. Order your H2O X5 steam cleaning system, a $500 value, for just 4 easy payments of $43. Order now and we'll upgrade your X5 package. We'll add a 6th mode with a dusting and polishing wand. Valued at over $30, this extra bonus attachment makes your H2O X5 the H2O X6. That means your 10-piece system becomes a 12-piece system at no extra cost to you. All for just 3 easy payments of $43. Call or click right now.
You need some help?
Your tow chains are a little loose. Could spark a wildfire. I could show you how to secure them properly if you'd like.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Anytime. You should check out SmokeyBear.com. They've got a bunch of tips on wildfire prevention.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Tired of scrolling Netflix? Trying to find something that's worth watching? Want to skip the censorship in mainstream media? Well, now you can with Epic TV. New exclusive content every day with over 100 never-before-seen movies, films, and documentaries. Available and streaming now at your fingertips. For a limited time now, you can get 60% off Epic TV by subscribing or upgrading to a yearly plan. Plus, get an additional $10 credit to rent featured movies on Epic Cinema today. Skip mainstream narratives and find quality family entertainment from the comfort of your very own home. Say no to big tech and subscribe to Epic TV.
Welcome back. The director of national intelligence says China is growing increasingly confident in its ability to influence elections.
A Senate hearing on foreign threats to the 2024 elections exposed Chinese regime tactics being used in the U.S. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has takeaways from the hearing.
Slowing down the degree to which
a Senate hearing Wednesday on foreign threats to the 2024 elections exposed tactics the Chinese Communist Party is using to influence public opinion in elections in the U.S. Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines says the CCP has perfected influence operation tools through AI and big data analytics.
I think they're growing, we assess, really increasingly confident in their ability to influence elections, but remain concerned about the possibility of blowback should they be discovered.
Haines says Beijing targeted congressional candidates to meddle with U.S. elections and exerted influence over elections in Canada, Australia, and Taiwan. The National Intelligence Director says global tactics include bankrolling candidates, using deep fakes, and collecting polling data to find targets. She says China's military will take over and operate social media accounts on different platforms.
When we get intelligence that indicates that the PRC is, for example, taking on social media accounts or things like that in a platform, we then pass that information through. The FBI is able to provide that to the companies to take action.
The Chinese Communist Party in January during Taiwan's presidential election swarmed the internet with AI-generated videos, audio clips, and texts. Chinese regime operatives drove false claims on YouTube and TikTok, suggesting the party more critical of Beijing cheated with the United States' help. Senator Angus King says he doesn't want the U.S. to become the truth police. He wants attribution of sources, so people know if information is coming from a foreign government. Senator James Langford agreed attribution is the challenge. He asked Haines what's being done to stop influence operations in the 2024 elections.
We are identifying specific, credible intelligence. We are passing that to the companies or exposing it publicly as the case may determine.
In Canada, a government commission on foreign interference this month named China as the most persistent and sophisticated foreign influence threat to the country. The commission's report says the CCP's long-term game includes incentives like paid trips, business opportunities, prestigious invitations, and political support, along with disincentives like visa denials, harassment, and intimidation to retaliate if a candidate doesn't play along. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And joining me now for more is Stephen Yates. He's a former White House Deputy National Security Advisor and now China Policy Initiative Chair at the America First Policy Initiative. Good morning. It's really good to have you. Now, first, could you talk to me about your takeaways from that hearing and your main concerns now?
Well, my key takeaway was there are two separate things they were talking about. One was somewhat this long-term effort at influence operations that have a fairly familiar pattern to them of trying to get close to people in office or running for office, offering them inducements, access, opportunities if they play well, and then trying to harass or penalize them if they do not perform as they have been asked to or encouraged to do with regard to the People's Republic of China's interests. And so that, I think, has been a long-term game. We've seen some examples in Congress and elsewhere where they've had staffers or personal relationships or other kinds of things that have fallen into this influence operation category. The second part is the technological weaponization of that, where they're talking about taking over social media accounts, taking on the persona of people, creating deep fakes that could trick people and try to steer opinion close to election time. Now, Americans of various stripes have perfected how to do this in the dirty wars of politics getting close to the election date. It is troubling that people in the CCP have perhaps picked up on this and may either hire or use those same Americans or do so themselves via technology to try to shape outcomes. And I would just emphasize they don't just focus on offices that are important like the presidency. They can also do this at the level of city council, county commissioner, state legislature, trying to groom influence from the grassroots up.
Right, that's a very good point to make. Now, I want to talk more about the second part with the election around the corner. Talk to me how well you think the U.S. is prepared to counter these threats, technological threats, and get ahead of those malign actors, especially since we know now with them being able to operate at a higher volume and scale through using AI.
Well, this is a great place of inequality between the systems of the United States and the system that the Chinese Communist Party uses. In China, they sort of have a civilian government fusion where everyone basically works on the same sheet and everyone knows who their boss is. In the United States, we have a real private sector and a real government sector. There have been problems in the recent past about the government engaging, I think, inappropriately in trying to collaborate with big tech in shaping American political opinion. That is a hindrance in their effectiveness in 2024. But really, in this regard, we have to rely heavily on the effectiveness of our private sector. And these big platforms on their own, we need to have them have vigorous programs to have open sourcing, accountability, collaboration when they see these state actors moving. It's our private sector that will see it most likely before our intelligence services or government will.
Got it. So with a little less than a minute, I want to just quickly get in one more question. What do you think about the division among Americans? And, reports about CCP money, for instance, behind right now key anti-Israel groups, for instance, also instigators that make their way into protests seemingly over and over again. So how could adversaries like Iran and the CCP capitalize from this?
Well, you're absolutely correct. With the open border and the movement of just a huge number of undocumented people from all over the world, we've had an increase in protests. And the online activity is increasingly collaborative. And with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin getting together and talking about their partnership, we'll only see an increase in this kind of effort to divide and accentuate divisions in the United States. This is an area where an FBI and intelligence community with proper priorities should be able to help and to work collaboratively with law enforcement. We need that corner turned in 2024 and going forward.
Got it. Thank you so much, Stephen Yates. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anti-Israel protesters occupy the University of California, Irvine's library and step up a protest camp.
Police arrived on campus grounds as students were holding Palestinian flags and signs.
Some signs calling for the university to divest from its relationships with Israel.
Police later clashed yesterday with protesters who occupied a building. About 200 to 300 protesters surrounded a UC Irvine lecture hall at a time when no classes were in session.
California State University has placed Sonoma State Campus President Mike Lee on leave. The move followed his decision to give in to the demands of protesters and consider divesting from Israel.
Lee announced concessions to an anti-Israel encampment without proper approval. Lee also proposed an academic boycott of Israel and collaboration with activist groups for decision-making.
A new report links the Chinese Communist Party to the anti-Israel protests that have been taking place in the U.S. since after the October 7th Hamas terror attacks. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the findings published by the Network Contagion Research Institute.
The report analyzes the activities and foreign relationships of the Shut It Down for Palestine movement since its formation in October 2023. It describes the group as an anti-capitalist, anti-police, and anti-government protest movement. The report says Shut It Down for Palestine functions as a network for organizing frequent demonstrations and using direct action campaigns to target critical infrastructure and public spaces. The report says members of the Singham network operate under the Shut It Down for Palestine umbrella. The Singham network is a global web of nonprofits, financial sponsors, and alternative news sources connected to Neville Roy Singham. The New York Times wrote in April 2023 that the socialist Singham, quote, works closely with the Chinese government media machine and is financing its propaganda worldwide. The Jerusalem Post wrote that Singham worked as a consultant for Huawei, lives in Shanghai, and shared office premises with a Chinese propaganda firm. He has also reportedly been spotted at CCP workshops and has been investigated by the US, Canada, and India for CCP operations. According to the New York Times, Singham denies working for any political party or government and says he is guided only by his own beliefs and long-held personal views. The report says the Singham network exploits regulatory loopholes in the U.S. nonprofit system to move giant sums of money to organizations and movements that actively stoke social unrest at the grassroots level. According to the report, Shut It Down for Palestine has ties to extremist groups that embrace a violent single-state resolution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The report says the recent protests seem focused on Israel, but they are part of a well-funded initiative driving a revolutionary anti-government and anti-capitalist agenda. Senator Mark Rubio told Fox News Digital that he warned the Biden administration of the ties between the Chinese Communist Party and certain far-left organizations operating in the U.S. The report calls for more accountability from nonprofits to ensure that they are not exploiting their position to support terrorist activities or enhance the agendas of foreign powers that are hostile to the United States. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And NTD reached out to Shut It Down for Palestine for a comment on their alleged ties to extremist groups. We did not immediately hear back from them. And coming up later, Republicans are making crime a central issue this election. How the House voted on 3 new bills aimed at supporting law enforcement.
And it's National Police Week. How is officer morale? What can elected officials do to support those who protect the public? A former prosecutor says that's by using their bully pulpits.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shin-Yun.
Do you know that Cars for Compassion is the best way to donate your car? Through this non-profit program, you can not only help us keep bringing the world independent and daringly truthful journalism, but also significantly impact the life of somebody who needs a vehicle. The Epoch Times fights misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. Every single contribution to Cars for Compassion is a powerful endorsement of our unwavering mission. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org and let us know about your car, and we'll schedule a pickup time and email you a tax-deductible receipt. To do this, just click the link below. Support truth, compassion, and hope. Donate your car right now at www.carsforcompassion.org.
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
Good to have you back. Russia and China continue to strengthen their so-called no-limit partnership. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in China, meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping.
Putin and Xi in Beijing today pledged to deepen their strategic partnership as Russian troops advance in Ukraine.
Beijing continues to supply Moscow with high-tech components for weapon production to bypass Western sanctions. It also buys the bulk of sanctioned Russian oil.
Russia-China military ties have also tightened. Joint war games have been held involving troops, naval drills, and long-range bomber patrols. Putin says he will discuss the war in Ukraine with Xi later today.
This is Putin and Xi's fourth face-to-face meeting since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Xi declared what he called a no-limits partnership with Putin just weeks before the war started over 2 years ago. The Chinese regime's authoritarian model crushes political opposition, human rights, and freedom of speech.
Retired Colonel Grant Newsham told NTD the wars in Ukraine and Gaza distract the U.S. from any serious attention to China. Here's Newsham on the Xi-Putin relationship.
The more the fighting goes on in Ukraine, the more the Americans have to focus on that, and things are getting pretty dicey there. You're emptying out American arsenals. The same thing goes with Gaza. It's a huge political issue in the United States. It's caused chaos in parts of the U.S., certainly on some college campuses. It has handcuffed U.S. political movement. The administration clearly is trying to thread a needle unsuccessfully and play both sides of this.
Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico is in stable but serious condition after being shot 5 times from close range. His deputy says he was undergoing surgery. He was shot yesterday outside the House of Culture in the town of Handlova, where he was meeting with supporters. Police have a suspect in custody. The shooting in Slovakia comes 3 weeks ahead of a crucial European Parliament elections. Fico, a third-time premier, is staging a political comeback after campaigning on a pro-Russian and anti-American message. Critics are worried the country under Fico's leadership would abandon Slovakia's pro-Western course and follow the direction of Hungary under populist Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Thousands have repeatedly rallied in the capital and across Slovakia to protest Fico's policies. Condemnations of political violence quickly came from leaders across Europe.
The Republican Party is making crime a top issue this election.
The House passed 3 bills yesterday in support of law enforcement as Republicans call for bipartisan backing for police.
Republicans are highlighting crime as a central issue for voters during National Police Week. On Wednesday, the House approved 3 bills to support and protect law enforcement officials.
And this week we pay tribute to those who do clothe themselves with that dignity and decency and who stand on the lines of justice and keep us safe. So as Leader Scalise mentioned, we'll be passing legislation on the floor to make that clear.
The first of these, dubbed the Detain and Deport Illegal Aliens Who Assault Cops Act, passed with a 265 to 148 vote. The second, the D.C. Crimes Act, would lower D.C.'s youth offender status from 22 to below 18. It passed 225 to 181. A majority of Democrats voted no to these 2 bills. Speaker Johnson held a press conference Wednesday in which he said the Biden administration had adopted a pro-crime agenda.
An FBI report just yesterday has reported that the rate of assaults on law enforcement officers in America is at a 10-year high. We have got to reverse that. That anybody who's not involved in the radical, woke, progressive left understands clearly that you got to maintain the peace.
Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar argued their lack of cooperation with the GOP came down to some Republicans defending January 6th detainees. He told reporters that Republicans, quote, will stand with some law enforcement, but they won't stand with others. A third bill, the Improving Law Enforcement Officer Safety and Wellness Through Data Act, passed with bipartisan support. Under it, the Attorney General would have to submit a report on violent attacks on police officers.
The purpose of our hearing.
The House Homeland Security Committee Wednesday held a hearing on how law enforcement officers should be supported. Democratic Ranking Member Benny Thompson questioned law enforcement on gun control and universal background checks to reduce gun violence. Virginia Sheriff Mike Chapman suggested no amount of legislation will keep guns out of the hands of bad actors.
And so you can do whatever you want. The fact of the matter is, I think we've got to hold these people accountable that use guns in crimes and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, rather than constantly trying to change laws that are really only going to impact the honest citizen buying a gun. So.
Austin Police Association President Michael Bullock suggested defunding police departments is responsible for a shortage of officers and an increase in crime.
It's pretty quantifiable because we have seen every year since this started, in particular back in 2018, we've lost more officers than we've been able to recruit. So it has a very definitive impact on those numbers. As far as morale goes, it takes a very heavy toll on officers to try to maintain the same level of service that our community expects and deserves.
Crime will be a top issue this November. Both Republican and Democratic voters are increasingly seeing it as a priority this election.
National Police Week started Sunday, May 12th. How is police morale? What can help officers keep the public safe? Let's delve into what needs to be done to support the men and women in blue with Cully Stimson, a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation who's a former local, state, and federal prosecutor.
Well, an ordered society depends on the equal and fair enforcement of the law everywhere across the country. There's 18,000 police departments, and they serve in all 50 states and territories. And when you don't have the rule of law, you don't have a society. And so the police officers are on the front lines of ensuring our constitutional liberties.
And what needs to be done in order to give these policemen the resources they need in order to do their job?
Well, first off, most police departments are funded at the local or state level. So you think of the FBI, but that's just, the federal side of things. Only federal prosecutors only prosecute 10% of the crimes across the country. The local prosecutors, the 2,300 elected DAs, prosecute 90%. So the police officers are serving in your local community. So it's up to the city councils, the county councils, or the state to fund adequately police departments, making sure they have the adequate training and equipment. And then on the backside, making sure that those very, very few who take the law in their own hands are held accountable just like any other citizen. So it's a carrot and stick approach. Morale and retention is down in these police departments. The defund the police movement is real. D.C., for example, is 500 police officers short of where they should be, and that's the same in a lot of these big blue cities. So they need funding.
And right at the beginning of National Police Week, 5 officers were shot, including 1 who died. So funding is one aspect that you're highlighting here that needs to be brought in order to bolster their morale and their ability to function as a unit. But what else needs to be done?
Well, I think there's the bully pulpit that the president should, but hasn't sadly used to support men and women in law enforcement. And state and local leaders need to step up and use their bully pulpits and call out the people who are calling for defunding the police. Call out the people who are taking matters in their own hands and committing crimes or assaulting police officers. I mean, look, in the last decade, 2,519 police officers died in the line of duty. That's a 9/11. That's a 9/11's worth of people. And those people wore the uniform, men and women. And so we have to remember the sacrifice that they and their families go through each and every day when they step out to enforce the law.
Can you give us any jurisdictions that are examples of good practice here to allow these policemen and women to function properly and do their job and have high morale?
Yep. San Diego County, where I used to be a prosecutor, where I used to serve in the Navy early in my career, they have adequately funded the police. They have a DA, Summer Stephan, who's the model of a DA. She's apolitical. She enforces the law, all of them fairly. And they don't have a morale, retention, or recruitment problem in the San Diego DA's office because they have good pensions, they have good training, they coordinate with the DA's office, and they have a culture of lawfulness across the county, and that's why it's a model for the country.
Well, Cully Stimson, thank you so much for your time. Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, some good news for football fans. Netflix is teaming up with the NFL for live Christmas Day games. More on a 3-year deal signed this week. That and more with the host of NTD's Business Matters.
Do you ever wake up and realize your life has no purpose?
Do I have a death wish? Morgan asked. Maybe I did. I thought this would be our final run ever. We'd make millions and millions of dollars. But God had other plans.
Peter Lowe, the one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
The next day, something strange happened. Someone came up to me and gave me this flyer about Jesus.
You can be in heaven, or you can be in hell. The choice is yours.
We'll walk straight out of here. Pretend to be the media.
This pathetic maggot got caught trying to escape my prison. Nobody escapes my prison.
He's a changed person. He's a new man.
I found Christ in here, and he forgave me.
I found Christ too.
My name is Peter Lowe, and I will be executed in 2 hours. Why am I being executed, you ask?
Jesus is for free, and salvation is a gift. Do you believe in Jesus?
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Welcome back. Joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the financial world.
I've done some Google searches, Don. I see the AI. What's going on?
Yeah, so, as the artificial intelligence race speeds up, news outlets, could be left in the dust here, potentially. So what happened was Google announcing that it's going to combine its search engine with its artificial intelligence model. So basically what this is going to do is that Google will be able to answer directly user questions at the top of search results on the page. So basically Google will do the Googling for you, the company says. In other words, users will no longer have to click on the actual links displayed in search results to find the information they are seeking. It could be potentially bad news here for news outlets, though, because it might mean fewer clicks. Why spend time clicking on a link when Google has already scoured the internet and harvested relevant information for you, right? Soon after the announcement, the news industry began sounding the alarm, some of them at least. So the chief executive of the News Media Alliance told CNN that, quote, "This will be catastrophic to our traffic as marketed by Google to further satisfy user queries, leaving even less incentive to click through so that we can monetize our content." That's what he said.
Well, it's a fair concern. Also, I'm wondering what about all the other companies, that rely on SEO and content marketing people that click on and search for their questions. All right.
And you have to think about this too. I mean, you can just get flat out false information from AI. That's one reason to click the link.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Hallucinations from AI, a real thing.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely do not rely on just the first thing that pops up. Well, all right, so maybe that also answers the other question. All right, so let's move on to, because summer will be here. Before we know it, some states could be seeing power shortages. What's happening there?
Exactly. So the U.S. Southwest and Texas are at increased risk of power supply shortfalls during the peak times of demand this summer, and this is according to the North American Electric Reliability Corporation yesterday. So parts of the Midwest and New England are also under elevated threat of inadequate power supplies in high electricity consumption periods this summer. But the U.S. Southwest and most of the East Coast are expected to see normal conditions, so that's good on that front. So why is this important, right? So extreme heat, new data centers, as well as increased manufacturing activity and electric vehicles are raising U.S. power demand forecasts in the summer months. So at the same time, there are predictions for lower wind power and shrinking coal-fired generation expected to reduce supply in parts of the United States. So heavy demand on power grids without enough supply or with a hamstrung transmission and distribution network, it can raise power bills and lead to outages.
Well, yeah, and that peak demand usually comes in the evening when workers come home from work. They start charging their EVs. They crank up the ACs and everything. So now we're going to move on. Trump media says it will delay its quarterly filing. Why is that?
Yep. So Trump's media company still in the news right now. So the Media and Technology Group filed a notice to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission yesterday that it would delay its quarterly filing due to an auditor change. So now, if you remember, a few weeks ago, the company dismissed previous auditor B.F. Borgers after the SEC charged the accounting firm with massive fraud earlier this month. Trump's media company said it was unable to complete the review of its financial statement for the quarter that ended March 31st due to the timing of the appointment of its new auditor, Semple, Marshall, and Cooper.
Right. I think we remember all that with them ultimately settling or agreeing to a $12 million civil penalty. Let's move to something more positive. So we have Netflix that's scoring with National League football fans. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think our sports correspondent Dave Martin actually reported on this, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday. So let me just go through the basic facts here. Yes, you're right. The streaming service announced yesterday a 3-year partnership with the NFL to broadcast Christmas Day games live. So this year, Netflix will air 2 holiday games on December 25th in 2025 and 2026. It's going to stream at least 1 game. So financial terms of the deal were not disclosed, and the NFL already partners with most streaming platforms, including Thursday night games on Amazon and Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV.
Well, Behind the Steel Curtain reports that NFL fans are just getting frustrated now with how many subscriptions they need to have to these services to actually just watch football.
Yeah.
You can't just watch football on cable anymore, I guess.
Exactly.
Don Ma, host of Business Matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going to break here. A tiny restaurant in Mexico City is the first taco stand to earn a Michelin star. More on the small business with big aspirations up next.
Stay tuned to get 2 rolls of alien tape free. You wouldn't stick your mother-in-law on the wall, but you could with alien tape. It just sticks. Just peel and stick to make anything stay in place quick. Brick, pavers, marble, tile, plastic, even leather. Nothing works better than alien tape. You wouldn't stick your fishbowl on a moving car, but you could with alien tape. The secret is nano-stick technology that grabs and locks on to secure one side of the surface to the other. Alien tape secures in seconds, then twist, pull, and rinse to reuse. Call or go online to get your first roll of alien tape for just $19.99, plus shipping and processing. But to make this deal really stick, we'll give you 2 more rolls absolutely free. You get 3 rolls of alien tape for one low price. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-490-1364 or go to tryalientape.com. So call 1-800-490-1364 or order online at tryalientape.com.
Funny expression.
There's a little scar right below his neck. The artist, on a trip to somewhere in South America, he met this kid who told him a story about himself. The technique is really good. As you'll see, like in the foreground, there's water on his face. The texture is so realistic, but then sort of in the back, you have these washed out colors, almost a sort of fantasy feel. The whole of the picture is very balanced, and you still get that sense of harmony and warm light from it. The artist, he was really moved by the child's spirit. The child's from the slums, and so he looks around and he sees people who either get into drugs or they get into gangs, and he doesn't want that for himself. So he was telling this artist about how he's going to make a better life for himself. The immense spirit and determination that the kid had really stuck with the guy, so that's why he painted such a large portrait of the child.
Many of us have been child fighters. But this little kid learned to defend himself in his own way. It's a great sacrifice that way. And so this is another form of strength, another form of endurance. We are capable of much more than we think. These children amaze us.
Good to have you back. A chef in Mexico City is basking in glory. His eatery was just awarded this week the first ever Michelin star for the kind of food he serves.
That's because he runs a small taco stand in a tiny 100-square-foot space. Let's take a look.
Newly crowned Michelin-starred chef Arturo Rivera Martinez works cheerfully over a nearly 700-degree grill. He cooks at the first taco shop to ever get a coveted star from the French Dining Guide. What's the secret to making a taco good enough to win a 1-star Michelin rating? The answer may surprise you.
There is no secret. There is nothing special. The secret is in the quality of the taco, the meat, the tortilla, everything. There is no secret.
At Mexico City's Tacos El Califa de Leon, there are only 4 things on the menu, all tacos, and all of which came from a cow's rib, loin, or foreshank. The owner is proud of his shop's accomplishments and says the award has inspired him.
It was our turn to be awarded, to be recognized with such an important international award. We are more than committed because from now on, with this award, it drives us every day to be more competitive, more original, and to be competitive in all aspects.
Taco fans from across the city seek out the busy taco stand.
I am from Mexico City, and I know a lot of taquerias, and this one is very good. The flavor and service are incredible.
It's the only taco shop among the 16 Mexican restaurants given 1 Michelin star, as well as 2 eateries receiving 2 stars. Almost all the rest are posh restaurants. The shop's prices are quite high by Mexican standards. A single taco costs nearly $5, but customers think the tacos are the best in the city. Loyal fans will likely now have to wait in line a bit longer to get their favorite, now Michelin-starred, taco.
Nevertheless, made more accessible.
Wow.
I think Michelin food.
Yeah, well, I mean, this looks like a really great place, and I've been to some Michelin star restaurants. They go all out, and they really put a lot into what goes into that food.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, it's great that street food is also represented or included in those awards now because it's such a big part of culture and the experience. And, I think it's great. I love it.
Yeah, and hopefully getting that Michelin star will really boost their business.
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed. All right, I have no doubt about that. And we are heading to a quick break right now. We'll also be right back with more, so stay tuned.
NTD News, the fastest growing independent news source in America, bringing you breaking news from around the world. Expert analysis, investigative reporting, and original award-winning documentaries. We're known for our uncensored China coverage you won't find anywhere else. We cover the stories that affect you and shape our world without the political noise. We report from the heart with you in mind. Watch us right here on NTD News.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. 2 presidential debates are now on the schedule. President Biden and former President Trump accept invitations from 2 mainstream media outlets for a battle of wits.
The Supreme Court orders Louisiana to use congressional map with an additional mostly black district. The impact that could have on the coming election.
From state-backed hacking to stealing advanced U.S. technologies, a House hearing explores the growing cyber threat posed by Communist China.
Republicans prioritizing support for law enforcement this National Police Week, how the House voted on 3 new crime bills.
And some good news for football fans. Netflix is teaming up with the NFL for live Christmas Day games. More in a 3-year deal signed this week.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome. Today is Thursday, May 16th. Today's top news. After months of stalemate, President Biden and former President Trump coming to a sudden agreement over 2 debates.
But the dates and formats could surprise many Americans. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us the details.
After some quick back and forth, Biden and Trump have now both agreed to 2 debates. The first one by CNN happening in just 6 weeks on June 27th. Another one by ABC on September 10th. Biden on Wednesday afternoon said he's looking forward to these debates while denying that he's doing one so early in June because he's worried about his polling. But Trump's now asking for 4 debates in total, including one by Fox on October 2nd, saying Americans need to hear more about inflation, the border, and chaos in the world. Biden's campaign, meanwhile, slamming the door for more debates, accusing Trump of playing games and insisting that Biden only wants 2 one-on-one debates. Here's Biden in a video on Wednesday morning. Watch.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice.
And the formats of these debates are still being debated and could surprise many. And Trump says he wants large venues to make it more exciting, while Biden's campaign wants no live audience, saying noisy spectacles aren't helpful. The June CNN debate, for example, won't have an audience and will also be the earliest televised presidential debate on record. It also marks the first time that candidates break away from the bipartisan group that has run these debates for decades. It's also the first time the debates are set before either candidate becomes the official party nominee. All the surprises come as Biden and Trump already exchanging fire, though not yet on stage.
It was just announced last month, inflation surged once again and surged very badly. Joe Biden's inflation tax continues to take away 30 to 50% of every dollar you have.
The factors that caused inflation was in place when he walked into the administration, when he took office. As you know, the pandemic caused inflation around the world.
Meanwhile, third-party candidate RFK Jr. is now accusing Biden and Trump of trying to exclude him by bypassing the traditional Commission on Presidential Debates. But Kennedy is not meeting the requirement in either case, as his polling only at 10%, which is below the 15% requirement set by both the Commission and major TV networks. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The Supreme Court has just issued a decision on Louisiana's redistricting. It ordered the state yesterday to hold the 2024 elections using a congressional map with an additional, mostly black district. 2 of the state's 6 congressional districts now have majority black populations. This potentially boosts Democrats' chances of gaining 1 more House seat from Louisiana. A lower court previously ruled the map an illegal racial gerrymander. The Supreme Court's order does not address the lower court's ruling. Instead, it only prevents another new map from being drawn for this year's elections.
Former President Trump is asking New York's High Court to intervene in his fight over the gag order in his New York trial. Trump lawyers filed a notice of appeal yesterday. The document is sealed, but a Trump campaign spokesperson said it's a request to the Court of Appeals. The spokesperson called the gag order unconstitutional and un-American. He called it a, quote, third world authoritarian tactic. On Tuesday, a 5-judge panel of the mid-level appeals court said Judge Michelin made the right call. They said Trump's statements posed a significant threat to the integrity of witnesses' testimony. Last week, Michelin fined Trump $10,000 for violating the gag order and said he could face jail time if he did it again. Michael Cohen goes back on the stand today to face cross-examination. His testimony is expected to finish by the end of the day.
And former President Trump is appealing a verdict in E. Jean Carroll's defamation case against him. He wants to overturn the $83 million judgment. Carroll sued Trump for defamation over statements he made denying her allegations of sexual assault. An attorney for Trump wrote yesterday Trump is appealing all orders and rulings that led to the final judgment last month. Trump said the verdict was, quote, absolutely ridiculous and politically motivated. Carroll's lawyer did not immediately comment on Trump's appeal.
A federal judge will not shorten the prison sentence for former Trump White House advisor Peter Navarro. Navarro is in prison for contempt of Congress after defying a subpoena from the House January 6 committee. Navarro asked a D.C. district judge last week to allow him to cut 30 days off of his 4-month prison sentence. He asked for 30 days of supervised release instead. Navarro cited the First Step Act. The judge rejected that request yesterday. Navarro reported to a Florida federal prison in March after the Supreme Court rejected his appeals.
And a quick update on the Gaza Strip Pier project.
The U.S. military finished installing the floating pier this morning and expects to have aid flowing very soon.
The sea route is designed to bolster the amount of aid getting into the Gaza Strip, but it's not considered a substitute for cheaper land-based deliveries. Aid agencies say those are much more sustainable.
The boatloads of aid will be deposited at a port facility built by the Israelis just southwest of Gaza City and then distributed by aid groups.
Now, from state-backed hacking to stealing advanced U.S. technologies, a House hearing explores the increasing cyber threats posed by Communist China. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my observations.
The House Oversight Committee on Wednesday sat down with Intel experts to discuss solutions to Beijing's cyber warfare. The hearing comes as U.S. and UK officials are sounding the alarm over rising cyber threats from Communist China.
In fact, if you took every single one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts and focused them exclusively on the China threat, China's hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1.
From unfair trade practices to advanced technologies to transnational repression, the Chinese Communist Party is reaching its hands into every sphere of U.S. society.
Sophisticated surveillance balloons across our sovereign land, technical surveillance stations just 90 miles away in Cuba, maritime port threats, Huawei, strategic land purchases near military installations, fentanyl. I'm not even addressing space, deepfakes, or 5G or genomics.
Earlier this year, FBI Director Christopher Wray warned of a Chinese state-backed hacking campaign named Volt Typhoon. The group reportedly targeted critical U.S. infrastructures including oil pipelines, water treatment plants, and telecommunications. Testifying before the House Select Committee on the CCP, Wray said the goal of the operation was to, quote, wreak havoc on our critical infrastructure at a time of its choosing.
It's estimated that 80% of American adults have had all of their data stolen by the Communist Party of China. The other 20%, just most of their data. Add in the CCP's crippling stranglehold onto so many critical aspects of our supply chain, and what results is domestic vulnerability we have not seen in generations, if ever.
Last September, Chinese state-backed hackers reportedly breached multiple U.S. government agencies and stole roughly 60,000 emails from State Department officials. It took place just before Secretary of State Antony Blinken's China visit.
The attackers accessed the inboxes of the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, the U.S. Ambassador to China, Congressman Don Bacon, and key State Department employees.
Experts said the federal government needs to incentivize updates in the cybersecurity space. They said in doing so, it would encourage the private sector to do the same. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Moving on to aviation, the Justice Department accusing Boeing of violating terms of a settlement over deadly crashes involving its 737 models. Here to talk to us about this is William Trackman, the General Counsel at Mountain States Legal Foundation. Thank you for being here, William. Give us more insight into what it means for the DOJ to accuse Boeing of not implementing an ethics program to ensure that its operations were not violating any fraud laws.
Yeah, this goes back to 2021 when Boeing was already having problems. They weren't as much in the news, but the settlement agreement with the Department of Justice said it's going to implement a bunch of reforms, one of which is an internal program to keep up quality and ethics. And apparently they haven't done a good job because the DOJ just filed a letter with the court saying they've fallen down on the job, and that reopens the prosecution that was going on in 2021 that Boeing settled in the first place. So now they have a dilemma on their hands. They said they're going to respond to the government's letter, but at the current pace, we may actually see a criminal prosecution of Boeing in addition to all these other investigations that are going on.
Right, and Boeing agreed to resolve the criminal charge by paying $2.5 billion. That's a process called deferred prosecution agreement. But now there could be prosecution over this that you're saying. What would that look like, and is that likely to happen?
Well, what is a corporation, right? In the abstract, a corporation is just a series of legal relationships codified in documents, and you can't just put documents in jail. So you'd have to find the people who are responsible. But the problem with that is that Boeing's had a ton of turnover lately. In fact, the CEO is already saying that he'll resign at the end of the year. Of course, I guess it isn't imminent enough that he needs to resign before then, because we're closer to Christmas than we are the new CEO of Boeing. But they're going to have to find the responsible parties and figure out who fell down on the job, because clearly they haven't lived up to the agreement that the government put in place in 2021. But there needs to be human beings behind the fact that there's a criminal prosecution ongoing. You can't just prosecute a corporation in the abstract.
I understand what you're saying, and that settlement goes back to the crashes of the 737 MAX 8 planes in Indonesia and Ethiopia that killed 346 people. How does this accusation add to the many challenges that Boeing is facing involving scrutiny over its safety procedures and so forth?
Well, Boeing's got problems. They seem snake-bitten right now. So you've got multiple whistleblowers, multiple investigations. You've got the FAA involved, and you've got any number of incidents like the Alaska Airlines flight that occurred a few months ago. So Boeing really does have a culture of accountability issue, as their CEO said, that they need to resolve. They need to get back into the business of quality over quantity, and they need to figure out what is going wrong in the process, because you can change the executives in the C-suite all you want, but as long as you have a problem on the ground, nothing's going to change. And so they really do have some difficult conversations to have. They need to have an honest look in the mirror before they can go forward and really regain whatever trust they've lost now.
William, is this news of the DOJ accusation significant bad press for Boeing, and will that alone amount to any challenges?
Well, it's a drop in the bucket right now. Obviously, they've had bad press quite a bit lately based on the whistleblowers, investigations, and incidents. This doesn't help. You know, at some point, maybe a month or two ago, we thought, well, it couldn't get any worse. Maybe now is the time to invest in Boeing because they're inevitably going to get back to where they used to be. But I think this just gives investors even less confidence that that's right now. Instead, it makes it so that Boeing's problems will live on, keep going, and even this one will go another month before their response date. And then, of course, the government will be able to make a decision as to how to proceed. Right now, they haven't announced what they're going to do next. They've just said Boeing's in breach. So there's quite a bit of uncertainty, and uncertainty is never good for companies. It's not good for your market cap. And I really do think Boeing is going to have a difficult couple of months ahead of it.
Well, thank you for coming on this morning. William Trackman, General Counsel at Mountain States Legal Foundation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're heading to break now. Coming up, from state-backed hacking to stealing advanced U.S. technologies, a House hearing explores the growing cyber threat posed by communist China.
And some good news for football fans. Netflix is teaming up with the NFL for live Christmas Day games. More on a 3-year deal signed this week, coming up.
Do you believe in Jesus?
The one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
We'll walk straight out of here, pretend to be the media.
This pathetic maggot got caught trying to escape my prison.
He's a changed person. He's a new man.
I found Christ in here. I found Christ too.
My name is Peter Lowe, and I will be executed in 2 hours. Why am I being executed, you ask?
Salvation is a gift.
Hi, I'm Tim Che, the director and writer of The Firing Squad. You can participate in our Million Souls campaign, inviting everyone you know to Jesus. Listen, we all face some kind of firing squad in our lives, and yet faith in the Lord, that challenge can lead us to true peace in this insane world. We can't do it without you. We're competing with big Hollywood movies, so we're relying on your voice to spread the word. Thank you again for supporting this important movie.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Thanks for staying with us. The Republican Party is making crime a top issue this election.
The House passed 3 bills yesterday in support of law enforcement as Republicans call for bipartisan backing for police.
Republicans are highlighting crime as a central issue for voters during National Police Week. On Wednesday, the House approved 3 bills to support and protect law enforcement officials.
And this week we pay tribute to those who do clothe themselves with that dignity and decency and who stand on the lines of justice and keep us safe. So as Leader Scalise mentioned, we'll be passing legislation on the floor to make that clear.
The first of these, dubbed the Detain and Deport Illegal Aliens Who Assault Cops Act, passed with a 265 to 148 vote. The second, the D.C. Crimes Act, would lower D.C.'s youth offender status from 22 to below 18. It passed 225 to 181. A majority of Democrats voted no to these 2 bills. Speaker Johnson held a press conference Wednesday in which he said the Biden administration had adopted a pro-crime agenda.
So much for being here. An FBI report just yesterday has reported that the rate of assaults on law enforcement officers in America is at a 10-year high. We have got to reverse that. That anybody who's not involved in the radical, woke, progressive left understands clearly that you got to maintain the peace.
Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar argued their lack of cooperation with the GOP came down to some Republicans defending January 6th detainees. He told reporters that Republicans, quote, will stand with some law enforcement, but they won't stand with others. A third bill, the Improving Law Enforcement Officer Safety and Wellness Through Data Act, passed with bipartisan support. Under it, the Attorney General would have to submit a report on violent attacks on police officers.
And a lot of this goes back to the justice system, because you think about it, if prosecutors don't prosecute criminals, they might do it again. And if they go after the police for taking action, police might just step back.
Right. Well, let's see what happens with those bills. Some say that, the chances for it to pass in the Senate are slim since it's Democrat controlled. But we have a similar topic coming up. The FBI has reported a rise in assaults against law enforcement officers.
2023 marked the highest in 10 years. This week, agencies around the country are holding memorials for peace officers. Here's NTD's David Lamb with more.
Douglas B. Miller, end of watch, June 9th, 1986.
This is the annual Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony at the Sheriff's Office headquarters in Santa Clara County, California.
1994.
When anyone puts on a uniform, they're doing it to protect and serve the community. So we want to remember all of those officers, all of those deputies, all those law enforcement brothers and sisters who have fallen, and really think about the contributions they've made to our community.
There's been 6 men from the Sheriff's Office that have paid the ultimate price, and this is just an opportunity to honor them, their memory, and their families as well.
Similarly, across the nation, multiple agencies from different cities came together. Peace officers are also known as law enforcement officers. According to the FBI on Tuesday, the rate of assaults on American law enforcement reached a 10-year high in 2023, with more than 79,000 officer attacks reported. Agencies reported 466 assaults with firearms in 2023, which is the highest level in a decade, FBI officials said. That's up from less than 200 officers assaulted and injured by guns in 2014.
It's just a challenging time to be a deputy sheriff or a police officer in the United States and in California. But we've got really great qualified individuals that are still signing up to do the service. We train our deputy sheriffs to be as safe as they can, to de-escalate, to gain cooperation.
We're having trouble recruiting people who want to put on that uniform, but we want to tell them too, this is an opportunity for you to serve your community. For many people, it's a calling, and so we want to do everything we can as the Sheriff's Administration to make sure we're protecting those who protect everyone else.
This solemn tradition has a long history. Back in 1962, President Kennedy issued the first proclamation for Peace Officers Memorial Day, as well as National Police Week, to honor those that gave the ultimate sacrifice. And as we've seen today, the men and women in uniform still hold this tradition. Reporting in Santa Clara, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
Beautiful ceremony.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic. And President Biden was speaking at a similar ceremony at the Capitol yesterday. And he was just saying, we owe you as a nation. You know, he's really trying to compete for the endorsements of these police unions as he faces off with Trump in November.
Right. And I mean, it's true. With those, it's a big issue because arguably, I would say that their morale and the way their ability to do their job, with assaults on the rise and everything, pay probably not that great. Our safety is, impacted as well. So
yes, public safety is a big issue right now.
Important right here. So, while we also have some lighter news, don't worry. Some good news, in fact, for sports fans specifically, because Netflix is scoring big with the NFL.
The streaming service announced yesterday a 3-year partnership to broadcast Christmas Day games live.
This year, Netflix will air 2 holiday games on December 25th in 2025 and 2026. It will stream at least 1 game.
Financial terms of the deal were not disclosed. The NFL already partners with most streaming platforms, including Thursday night games on Amazon and Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. Yeah, Christmas, football, it all goes together. Thanksgiving. I mean, I can't remember a holiday when we didn't have some kind of like football game.
Oh, yeah? Okay, great. I mean, that's where cultures differ. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I'll sit with my husband and watch if he wants to, sure.
Well, after visiting with the family all night, sometimes it's hard to get up and actually catch that noon game.
Well, hopefully you'll make it. You can just, roll out of bed, roll it. Maybe you just sleep on the couch.
Pajamas, you're good.
All right. We have to wrap up our show now, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
That's right. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.